MLB first pitch Friday, September the 6th. I know college football and the NFL are right around the corner this weekend, but don't sleep on baseball. It's a great moneymaker in the month of September. We're going to point you in the right direction for all these big games on Friday. I am Steve Merrill, filling in for Dan Alexander. He'll be back on Monday. He's in the studio right now producing and taking your questions during this live show. We will talk about any games you'd like, so ask away on Instagram, on TikTok, YouTube Shorts, YouTube TV, Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. We'll take your live questions throughout the show. But we're going to start off with some big game breakdowns from our two featured cappers today from WagerTalk.com. That, of course, is Bryan Leonard and Ross Benjamin on this Friday. And Bryan, let's get right to it. Let's look at a little big game breakdown in your AL Central, but we're not talking the Cleveland Guardians. We're talking about the two other teams that are dangerous in that division. Minnesota Twins at the Kansas City Royals. Huge weekend series, wild card implication, playoff implications in this one. What are you doing with Twins at Royals on Friday night, Bryan?
Well, we talked about this in the past, and the easiest way to judge the effectiveness of a starting pitcher is taking a look at his strikeout minus walk rate. Zebby Matthews, who in the minor leagues was just tremendous in this stat, has also been very good in the major leagues. He's got a 20.3%, while league average is 13.8%. So he doesn't walk anybody, and he gets a good amount of strikeouts. And that's something you could tell. If you do enough of that, you're going to win a lot of ball games in Major League Baseball. And while he enters play with a 7.41 ERA, a 1.47 whip, his expected ERA is only 4.51, almost three runs lower than that actual number. So I think we got an advantage on playing on him. And, he faced the Royals in his Major League debut and committed just 2 runs in 5 innings. So he did very well in that start. And in fact, in 17 innings of work on the season, Matthews has an 18-2 strikeout to walk ratio. He's only walked 2 players in his first 17 innings. That's something we like to see. After 3 good starts to start the year, he was blown up last time out against the Blue Jays. Toronto just hit him hard, gave up 9 earned runs in just 2 innings of work. It was a situation that Minnesota couldn't really pull him because the bullpen was already overrun with innings pitched, so he had to eat it last week. And that's why he comes in with that 7.41 ERA. But we look for a big-time bounce back from the Twins righty in this one. Cole Reagans, no doubt about it, he's had a solid year for the Royals. 3.46 ERA, 1.17 whip. But he's already thrown a career high 161 in the 3rd innings. In fact, his last 3 starts, they've been trying to get back, keeping his pitch count lower. 5, 4, and 5 innings of work, although he got hit pretty hard in a couple of those games. So he's fading a little bit as he gets tired as the season goes on. And, Kansas City is nearing a possible playoff spot. In fact, they're in pretty good shape to make the playoffs here. They can just play like 500 ball the rest of the way out. And so they're going to continue to watch his pitch count. They need to have him in the playoffs. He's their best starter. Although Lugo's having a career year, I'd much rather see Reagans, a guy who throws a lot more strikeouts than Lugo does. In fact, Lugo's numbers for his strikeouts has actually gone down the last 3 or 4 starts, pretty low. So he may be tiring as well, but and he throws a lot of innings. But the more a team sees a pitcher, the better they are. And this is the 3rd time. They're actually the 4th time that Minnesota has seen Reagans so far this year. They've already faced him 3 times, and he pitched pretty well against Minnesota in those 3 games. But as I said, as the year goes on, if you see a pitcher that much, I think that's an advantage to the hitters. Minnesota's also had its way with the Royals this season, winning 7 of 10. I was watching the Cleveland broadcast the other day when they were playing Kansas City, and Cleveland's had Kansas City's number. Minnesota's had Kansas City's number. But Minnesota has also had Cleveland's number. So it's a lot of that going around where they're all pretty close in talent, and it's going to be an interesting final in this division. I like the Twins here. I think Zebby Matthews bounces back strong, and as I mentioned, got to love a pitcher with that huge strikeout to walk ratio. I like Minnesota here against Kansas City. Much fresher pitcher at this point of the season. And you're getting them at a nice price here, a nice underdog price. So I will take Minnesota against Kansas City and probably what is the biggest game on the board today.
Yeah, that's an 8 o'clock Eastern start tonight on Friday. And, you mentioned Matthews. He doesn't walk a lot of guys. His whip, and it's at AAA this year, was the same way. He had an ERA of like 5.5, but his whip was decent. And even with that bad ERA now, Brian, his whip is still decent because he just doesn't put guys on base. So I still think whip is probably the best overall metric, even better than ERA. So we'll see if he starts to pitch up to his potential. From Western Carolina, 8th-round draft pick, 6'5", big boy from Western Carolina. Hey, we're going to talk to Ross Benjamin about another game that has huge playoff implications. Of course, that Royals-Twins game, they're separated by half a game for the final wild card spot. But, Ross, we're going to look at an interleague game, and not often can we say an interleague game has playoff implications, but it does because the Astros are holding on to the first-place position by 4.5 games in the AL West. The Diamondbacks in the NL West right now are 2.5 up for the wild card, half behind the Padres, who are also in that spot. What are you doing with this? Another big weekend series, in my opinion. I think you guys really hit on it with these big game breakdowns, Houston and Arizona on Friday night.
Thank you, Steve. After going through a torrid winning stretch of 50-24, Arizona has cooled off just a tad as they've gone only 4-6 in their last 10. Brandon Pfaadt is one of those pitchers that if you're an Arizona backer, Arizona fan, whatever term you want to use, he makes you pull your hair out because he could be so good at times for stretches, and then he can go through something like he's been going through of late, where over his last 7 starts, he's posted a 6.03 ERA. Houston is coming off a 3-game series at Cincinnati in which they were swept, but they return home for this one, and 24-12 in their last 36 at home. And an even better sign is tonight, Framber Valdez is scheduled to make the start for the Astros. He's been absolutely terrific over his last 5 starts with a 1.59 ERA and Steve, an 0.65 whip. And I agree with you on the whip as opposed to ERA, but in this case, both are very good. And not only that, he's giving you innings over those last 5 starts, a 6.8 innings pitched per start ratio. So, and he's coming off a start in which he was pulled after 7 innings, Steve, while throwing a no-hitter. So, which is an oddity. And the Houston bullpen has been solid since the 1st of August with a 3.12 ERA and a 1.21 whip. I'm going to go out on a limb a little bit here because I'm not willing to lay the type of juice they're asking you to on the money line with Houston. So I am going to go for the plus money option of the Houston Astros, -1.5, plus 125 over the Arizona Diamondbacks.
And that game also at 8 o'clock Eastern. 2 biggest games, 8:10 Eastern tonight, and we broke them down for big game breakdown. And producer Dan Alexander throwing some questions our way. I always appreciate it. And we got one, of course, he's not hosting today. He'll be back on Monday. He's in the studio, though. And surprisingly, the first question Dan throws to me is from Eric D. He said, are we still talking Phillies, Steve? Well, yeah, of course we're talking Phillies because they're one of the best teams in baseball. The Marlins might not qualify, Brian, but in respect to Dan Alexander and Eric D., we got to talk the Philadelphia Phillies. What are you doing with this game? September is here, and you guys have been doing this a long time like I have. We all know that September is a different handicap in Major League Baseball, and sometimes these bottom feeders start to play well. They bring up young talent. They have nothing to lose. They get a little bit of a spark after a disappointing season. The Marlins are the epitome of a disappointing season. They were a playoff team last year, and they've been out of the race basically from the start. What are you doing with this game and maybe this weekend series overall, Brian, Phillies and Marlins?
Yeah, it's interesting you bring it up. I was out watching the football game last night with Marco D'Angelo, and in Colorado was just knocking off Atlanta. And the previous day, the White Sox pulled that big upset over the Orioles. This is the time of year to bet those big dogs because nobody thinks they have a chance. They're not playing for anything, which people look at as negative. I think that's a positive because you don't have the stress of being in a pennant race, and that's something you have to take advantage of in going into these games because a lot of these teams they just haven't been there before. And I just talked about Kansas City. It's been a few years since Kansas City's been in the playoff race, and so we see a lot of value in the underdogs. And Miami's got Cabrera going today. He's a guy that's always been a big strikeout guy, but he walks too many players, and that is always a concern when you're taking a look at him here. But he has pitched pretty well since coming back from the IL. He's done a pretty good job in that regard. So he is one of those pitchers that you never know what you're going to get. He can go out and he can just pitch a great game, or he can get bombed. And unfortunately, with a lot of the young players, you see that in Major League Baseball. So they're hard to get a pinpoint on. Zach Wheeler going for Philadelphia. He will not win the Cy Young Award. That'll go to Chris Sale as long as he stays healthy. But Wheeler has had a hell of a season, and he's been pretty consistent. He's had a couple starts where he just didn't have it, but he's been pretty consistent. Big break for Philadelphia when Harper got hit in the hand, and he says he's okay. He's going to be able to play the rest of the season, hopefully, because he's a very injured player. That's a major situation to point to Philadelphia. And if you take a look at their leadoff hitter, the big home run hitter, he's been on a nice run. He was on a major slump before that. So it's tough when your leadoff hitter, your big power guy, just cannot hit the side of a barn. And that's one of the reasons why Philadelphia didn't have that success for a while. They struggled a little bit. But now he's hitting, and the rest of the team seems to be hitting. I prefer Philadelphia here, but I'm not going to lay that number. Maybe do something with maybe Wheeler strikeouts or something to that effect, but something to put you on Philadelphia without having to lay that over $2 special right there.
Yeah, we're going to see a lot of these $2 prices now that September is here. But like Bryan said, don't be surprised when some of these big $2 plus dogs cash occasionally, because they do still play hard. And baseball is a real individual sport. It's a team sport, but when you're batting, it's you versus the pitcher. When you're pitching, it's you versus the batter, and your stats matter more than any other sport. So these guys don't give up. They're still out there playing hard every day, and the young talent coming up especially is trying to earn spots for next year. Ross, one team that's actually played really well here down the stretch and might be on the outside looking in still is the Chicago Cubs. We talked Phillies. I mean, the cream of the American League. Your New York Yankees. So I got to ask you about this daytime game, and St. Jay is asking about it in the YouTube Shorts chat. And he said MLB, miles per hour, MPH, 21 miles per hour blowing out, or coming in today. I'm sorry, I misread that. Coming in from the outfield. I have not checked the wind. I will pull it up while you're breaking this game down. But obviously the wind is something we have to keep an eye on whenever a game is in Wrigley, especially daytime games. And right now that total is 7.5 over, which would tell you just by looking at the total, the wind is blowing in. Yankees, your New York Yankees, about $1.30 road favorite, Gill over Wicks. What are you doing with this one, Ross?
Yeah, what's interesting, Steve, is this total opened at 7, went to 7.5, despite those wind conditions of 21 miles an hour blowing in. Look, here's the thing. The Cubs have been, it's well documented, and it's been headline news in Major League Baseball, how hot they've been offensively. They've gone through a stretch where they put up a lot of runs. And Luis Heel, he has been terrific at times this year, but he's been textbook inconsistent. I don't trust him at this point. This line opened with the Yankees at minus 145. They're now down to 125, which speaks volumes to me. That, again, indicates to me that the Cubs are getting a lot of sharp money here. And my lean here would be to go against my beloved Yankees and take the Chicago Cubs in this spot, plus 110, plus 115, whatever you can get them at.
Yeah, Jordan Wicks is probably a lot of people are familiar with. He was round draft pick 8 back in 2021. I'd say he was mediocre in the minors. This year in the minors, he had 7 starts, a 5.6 ERA, below mediocre. He's actually been better, though, in the pros. 7 starts, 8 appearances, a 3.8 ERA. So it's kind of strange. Wicks has actually pitched better in the big leagues this year than he did in the minors. We'll see if that continues. The sharp money, as Ross mentioned, has been on the Cubs slightly this afternoon. That's a daytime game, 2:20 Eastern, a little bonus for the live viewers here on WagerTalk TV. And of course, we are live every Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. Eastern here on First Pitch. And then WagerTalk Today follows us up next at 12 noon Eastern live as well. And the Prez does read the chat. In fact, the Prez lives for the chat, and he will take some live questions from you as well on WagerTalk Today. And don't forget college football. College football kickoff show is live at 1:15 Eastern this afternoon. We'll be breaking down some of the biggest games, and I do mean we, because Bryan, Leonard, and myself and Teddy Covers will all be on together with Joe Ranieri at 1:15 Eastern. If you can't keep track, don't worry. Click subscribe and click the bell, and you will get an instant alert when your favorite shows go live. And also, when Ross Benjamin's, Bryan Leonard's, or myself, Steve Merrill's solo videos and free play videos go up throughout the week here on WagerTalk TV. And my college football top 25 solo video is up right now. It went live about 30 minutes ago I break down the 4 biggest games for Saturday college football. Don't miss out here on WagerTalk TV. All right, we're talking baseball, though. And, Bryan, let's look at some other big games on the board here. Not going to ask you about the White Sox. What are they at already? They're at Boston. They've already lost 109 games. Their winning percentage was about 24% a few weeks ago. That was on pace for the worst, most losses ever. Now it's at 22.5. Just amazing how bad they've been. But I do want to ask you about the Orioles and Rays. You know, I talked about how teams play hard still in the month of September. The one team I think you got to be cautious with, in my opinion, is Tampa Bay, though. The one team that maybe tosses the towel is a perennial playoff team that is out of it now, like the Rays, 6.5 out of the wild card. Orioles, by the way, are now in first place in the East. Bryan, any thoughts on this Rays-Orioles game tonight at 7 Eastern?
Well, Tampa yesterday only was outscored in 1 inning. Unfortunately, it was the first inning that gave up 4 runs. And they were able to come back, make it a game at the end, but didn't quite get there, unfortunately. But yeah, this is a team at Tampa Bay. They could go either way. They've got so much talent in the minors, though. I think it's not going to go. They're not going to fall too far off. Not a big fan of Kramer going for Baltimore. He's probably the weak link, but you know, Baltimore's so desperate right now for quality innings out of our starter that they need him to go along in this one. Shane Baz, guy who's always had a lot of talent but can't stay healthy. I think this is one of the few times that I've seen him pitching a full month without spending some time on the IL. So I really don't know what we've got with Baz. He is very inconsistent as well, but from a talent standpoint, he's a lot more talented as a starting pitcher than Kremer is. But then again, you take a look at those offenses. Tampa Bay has struggled since the All-Star break. Baltimore's had their own struggles, but when you take a look at their complete lineup and everybody they've got on the bench, far better offense than what Tampa Bay has. I prefer the Baltimore side in this one. It's not often you're going to get them in this 140 range as at home here. So I slightly lean with Baltimore, but they didn't make my cards today.
Yeah, once again, the Rays are a talented minor league system, like you said, so we'll see if that's enough to kind of keep them playing hard here in the month of September. But obviously, it's been a disappointing season for the Rays. You know, those Houston Astros that Ross broke down earlier, they started really poorly as well, 7-19, but they've turned things around over the past several months. Everyone was kind of waiting for Tampa to maybe do the same, and they haven't. They're now 2 games below 500 on the season. Ross, let's look at some other big games on the board here. I want to ask you about the Atlanta Braves. You know, Bryan referenced Colorado, Atlanta. Atlanta, maybe you could say, is underachieved this season as well, but even underachieving, they're still tied for a wild card spot right now. They're 8 behind the Phillies. I don't think they're going to catch them. They're plus 65 net runs on the season. I mean, it's been a decent season for Atlanta, but maybe a little below average compared to what they were expecting. The Toronto Blue Jays, though, definitely a team that has really underachieved this season. Dead last, 9 out of the wild card now in their division. You know, I talked about Tampa maybe being careful with them. The Blue Jays may be another team we have to be cautious with. So what's your take on this Toronto-Atlanta game tonight on Friday night?
Yeah, I'd be looking at the total here, which is 7.5. You got a good starting pitching matchup with Kevin Gausman and Max Fried. And you talk about Atlanta being underachieving this year, and I think the majority of that comes in the offensive department as opposed to their pitching. And so that's something I think is a major reason why they have underachieved. Also, the fact that Toronto at times can't hit their way out of a paper bag, and it's hard to pinpoint why, because when you look at that lineup, in that batting order, you just don't know why they can't produce more offensively. But at this stage, I don't see them flipping a switch and all of a sudden going on a offensive surge. So I would lean toward Atlanta and Toronto under the total of 7.5 in this one here, and looking for a low-scoring game here, Steve.
And once again, if you have any games you guys want us to cover in the live chats here on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, X, ask away. It's last call because we're going to get to best bets here in a moment. So if you want a game for Ross to break down here on the way out, let me know. We'll get to it. But I got to ask Bryan Leonard about another big game on the board tonight. His Cleveland Guardians against the LA Dodgers. And, you know, Bryan, everyone just assumed the Dodgers at this point of the season would have the best record, the most wins in baseball. Well, they are tied right now with the Philadelphia Phillies for the most wins in baseball. So it kind of turned out like we thought it would. But they haven't been necessarily the best team in baseball all year. Your Guardians at one point, just a few weeks ago, the best team in baseball. So this is a really good matchup. Cleveland and the Dodgers, but really curious to get your take on this game and maybe just your Cleveland Guardians big picture going forward.
I am a big believer in quotes. I know Teddy Covers puts a lot of quotes in his write-ups, and he does the same thing. It's interesting because the Cleveland Guardians pitching staff, they lose Shane Bieber before the season starts. And you take a look at some of the guys they've trotted out there, they have not been very good at all. And yet Cleveland's got this record, and that's supposed to be the strength of this team, is their pitching staff. Matthew Boyd and Alex Cobb joining this rotation has really helped. They've both been very good since they've signed in Cleveland and been here. In fact, both of them talked about how everybody in the dugout is rooting for each other, that they love to be on a team with this much love for the players. And you could tell that because when you take a look at the actual players on this Cleveland team, not overly impressive. They've got, obviously they've got one of the better hitters in baseball in Jose Ramirez. But other than that, Stephen Kwan, he was batting 364 maybe a month ago. He's down to about 290 right now. He has been in a terrible slump. Jimenez starting to hit a little bit. But overall, this offense is started the season very well. It's faded a little bit now. But they continue to find ways to win, and those are the kind of teams I like to back in the underdog role. The Dodgers, the only reason they're disappointing is because they've had so many injuries, and the Braves have had, obviously, losing the best hitter in baseball coming into the season in the first week didn't help things. So two teams I like a lot, and I think the Dodgers have actually done pretty well considering the situation they've been in because of injuries this year. Landon Knack's a guy that I like. He'll be starting today for the Dodgers. Another one of these guys that I'm sure LA wasn't even planning on seeing, if not more than a spot start every few months. But he's been pretty good. Dodgers' entire pitching staff has done a terrific job with these young guys, even in the minor leagues. So it should be a really interesting game. We're looking at a low total here, and I could see that. I like Matthew Boyd. He's a talented lefty. But when he does get hit hard. He's got a sweeping curveball that is really pretty to watch. But if the other team knows it's coming, that thing's out of there in no time. That's always a concern with the home runs from Boyd. But I think the under is probably the way to take a look at this one. I prefer both pitching staffs to at least the hitters right now. And, Ohtani's as great as he is, but he's hitting his home runs, but his batting average continues to go down. And Max Muncy has not been that great since he's been back. So I prefer the under here, but with these two starters going today.
Yeah, it's one of the highest totals on the board. In fact, there's only two games with nines tonight. It's this Cleveland-LA game and then also the other LA team, the Angels and Rangers. So definitely getting some line value there with that key number of 9. And Bryan likes the under with his Guardians and Dodgers. We're getting to best bets here in just a moment. Bryan's going to break down the Nationals-Pirates game. Ross is going to have a first 5-inning play for you in the Mariners-Cardinals. But here on the way out, Ross, I want to give you a chance to hit on one more game. Dealer's choice, my friend. National League, we got Rockies-Brewers, Reds-Mets, Giants-Padres. Any thoughts on any of those? Any of those games you want to talk about? We haven't touched on any of those yet.
Yeah, I guess the Giants and the Padres, I like that starting pitching matchup as well. The total opened at 8.5, down to 8. San Diego's been red hot over the last month or two. Michael King, very underrated starting pitcher. By the way, Steve, Michael King, you know where he's from? Rochester, New York, my friend.
I was going to say it's probably near the Canadian border.
Yeah, well, that's exactly where I am, Rochester, New York. Steve always likes to bring that up near the Canadian border. I'm 90 miles away and about 3 hours away from – yeah, about 3 hours away from Prez, thank God. Anyway.
Luckily, you have a militarized zone to separate you.
Anyway, I would lean toward the under 8 in this matchup.
Yeah, it's funny, Ross. That's actually the game I was going to throw to you. I think it's one of the better matchups on the board here. Giants-Padres, that's a 9:40 Eastern game, and he likes the under 8. And we have seen some sharp money come on the under. It opened 8.5 and is down to 8 in that Padres and Giants game. All right, thank you, everybody, to all the questions in the live chat. We had Henry joining us in YouTube Shorts asking about the Phillies and Marlins. And, of course, we touched on that game earlier. So, Henry, just rewind here on the replay. And once again, if you're joining us midway through, you can always watch the replays 24/7 here on WagerTalk TV for all your favorite shows. And don't forget about the free play solo game videos every day of the week: baseball, college football, NFL, pro football. Lots of content for free here. Hey, do us a favor. Thumbs up, like this show and all the videos when you watch. That keeps the content free and plentiful. Comment below, not only in the live chat, but here on the replays. We read the comments. We reply back. And also make sure you've subscribed. You've clicked that bell for an instant alert so you know when your favorite shows go live. And most importantly, you know when those solo free play videos are posted each and every day. And don't forget my college football top 25 preview video is ready right now. It went up about an hour ago here on WagerTalk TV for Saturday's 4 biggest games. All right, Bryan, Leonard, we had someone earlier saying they can't wait for your hockey to start in the live chat. We're about maybe, a month away, I guess. And then I'll give Nick. That was Nick with 3 eyes. He said, can't wait for Bryan Leonard's NHL. That's right around the corner. But, Bryan, we got college football, pro football, Major League Baseball. Give us a free play tonight in this Nationals-Pirates game, and also let us know what you got going on this weekend at WagerTalk.com.
Yeah, we've actually got a full slate going this weekend. I got that great special, and I'm sure Steve will talk about this in a moment. Great special for the weekend. And, I've got to play on that early game today. The Yankees-Cubs game, I think there's some value in that one. That's my only play I have up right now, but I've got, the college football game tonight. Been on a 26-13 run in college football, so we've got like 4 more plays on Saturday, 2 plays already up in the NFL on Sunday. So obviously a full weekend of football and baseball for us. And as you mentioned, NBA and hockey right around the corner. So it's a busy time of year for all of us. I'm going to take a look at this. I gave you a game that people actually care about is my big game breakdown. That's Minnesota and Kansas City. I'll give you a game where only 2 areas care about, and that's Washington and Pittsburgh. And I'm not really sure that either one of them really care that much about their team right now. As long as Skeens is on the mound, Pittsburgh's a big fan, but they can't get a lot of fans for any other pitcher on the mound. But Washington, Pittsburgh, DJ Hurst has been a lifesaver for the Cardinals pitching staff. He's got a 4.09 ERA, 1.27 whip on the season, and his expected ERA is even better at 3.38. He owns a 20.3 strikeout to walk percentage. That is much better than the 13.8%, which is league average. This is a guy, he does walk. We talked about Matthews earlier. Matthews doesn't walk anybody. Hurst will walk people, but he's such a good strikeout pitcher. He can get himself out of it. He's in the 89th percentile in strikeout rate, 81st percentile in whiff rate, 80th percentile in hard hit rate. I like those numbers, and I like his future in Major League Baseball. And on the surface, it looks like Luis Ortiz has had a breakout year. He's got a 3.19 ERA, 110 whip, which is very good. But his expected ERA is 4.09. And I talked about the strikeout and walk ratio. It's only 11.5, worse than league average. League average is 13.8. So his numbers are a little bit false in my thought process. And, you're also betting on him at a high point because he's thrown back-to-back 6-inning shutouts. So I prefer Hurts in this game, and much better than I like Ortiz. And your traditional numbers would say that Ortiz would be the spot. I don't like traditional numbers. I like to look past that and dig a little bit deeper. So I think we got a nice price here with Washington, and we'll take Washington as a small underdog in Pittsburgh today.
Bryan Leonard looking at the Pittsburgh Pirate-Washington National game for you free here on WagerTalk TV on MLB First Pitch. And don't forget to check out his official client best bets at WagerTalk.com. And he mentioned that special offer. It's good through this weekend only, and that's an instant $20 discount on a 3-day all-sports, all-access package. It's normally $69. You get it for just $49. No promo code needed. You go to any capper's page. You go right below their best bets, their single games. You'll see this 3-day all-access pass for just $49, just like you see on your screen right now. And you get every sport every day, 3 days and nights. That's football, baseball, and any other sport. UFC, auto racing, darts, whatever else Andy Lang might have. But yes, seriously, it's all inclusive. It's a great way to try out any capper you'd like. And you can use multiple cappers. So don't be stingy. Get Bryan Leonard, get Ross Benjamin, and get myself, Steve Merrill, and have a huge winning weekend Friday, Saturday, and Sunday right now for just $49 each. Ross Benjamin, let's look at another free play here on the way out. You're going to look at a first 5-inning game first 5 inning play in the Mariners and Cardinals game tonight at 8:15 Eastern. How do you recommend attacking this one?
Yeah, I mean, usually I'll give you a real detailed analysis on why I like a pick, but in this particular instance, I'm going to keep it pretty simple here, Steve. You're looking at Bryce Miller going for the Seattle Mariners. In last 6 starts, he's been in very good form with a 2.73 ERA and an 0.88 WHIP. Again, that WHIP figure, the 2.73 is very good, but that WHIP under 1 over a 6-start period really sticks out to me. Seattle, this is a team that struggled for just about all year long offensively. Number 26 in runs scored in Major League Baseball, last in team batting average at 218. They are coming off a game in which they put up a 6 spot. And if you follow Seattle all year and you do the algorithms, after they score 5 or more runs, they usually don't come back with they usually come back, I should say, with a weak offensive effort. So they've struggled to put together any kind of consistency offensively all season long. Eric Fetty, interesting story here, came over to the St. Louis Cardinals at the trade deadline, started the season with the lowly White Sox, and you look at his win-loss record with the White Sox, meaning team wins against team losses. He actually fared pretty well on a team that Steve just alluded to, has 109 losses as we speak. So going back to that, combined 11 home starts this year with the 2 teams, the White Sox and the Cardinals, a 1.98 ERA and a 1.10 WHIP. He has been textbook homer. The Seattle Mariners, right now, the current roster career-wise against Fetty, just a 238 team batting average, and more importantly, a very low 643 OPS. So I am going to eliminate the bullpens out of the equation. Neither one of these bullpens has been horrible of late, but they haven't been great as well. The first 5-inning total is 4. The game total is 7.5. So there's some value in my eyes to go under that first 5-inning total, which is more than 50% of the game total. I'm going to go Seattle, St. Louis, under the total of 4 in the first 5 innings, Steve.
It's Ross Benjamin giving you a little first 5-inning action here on MLB First Pitch. He likes Cardinals Mariners under the first half of that game. Technically more than the first half, the first 5 innings tonight on Friday. And that's it for First Pitch here. Don't forget, Wager Talk today is up live at noon Eastern, right after this show. And we're going to head there here in a moment. Dan Alexander doing a great job producing, sending your questions. And thank you, everybody watching us live. But don't forget, you can watch these shows replayed 24/7 all weekend long. You can also catch a lot of free play videos by clicking subscribe and clicking the bell for instant alerts. On the way out, I want to remind people we're talking a lot of baseball here, but college football shows at 1:15 Eastern. We'll be breaking down those games. I've also got my college football top 25 video loaded right now on WagerTalk TV, and my NFL Fade the Public Week 1 video will be up later tonight on Friday into Saturday. Football is here, but don't sleep on baseball. It's a great moneymaker as we've discussed this entire show. And by the way, I won again last night in baseball, now 22-6 the last few weeks in baseball, 22-6. So not a bad time to pick up an all sports, all access and get 3 days for just $49 from Bryan, Leonard, Ross Benjamin, myself, Steve Merrill, and everybody else at WagerTalk.com. Thanks for watching. Comment below on the replay. We read the comments and reply back, and we'll talk to you again soon here on WagerTalk TV.